This video contains details of disappearances, murder, kidnappings, weapons, explicit content, and other disturbing commentary and images. If you are sensitive to any of these topics, please click out of the video now. I mean absolutely no disrespect to any of the victims or families mentioned in this video. If you plan to stick around and watch this video, thank you, and sit back and enjoy. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are doing another true crime video. This is going to be my second true crime video that I did. The first one that I did, my first little tryout kind of, was on Gypsy Rose Blanchard and that whole case and her release from prison. And I really wanted to do a case from Michigan, where I am from. So today we are going to be talking all about Jeffrey Willis and the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa, the murder of Rebekah Bletsch, and the kidnapping of Madison Nygard. And we're going to go over the whole story from the very beginning up until the very end. If you can't handle it, that's fine. I totally understand. True crime can be very, very overwhelming, so I totally understand. Just click out and I will have another video for you guys to watch soon. And we're just gonna sit back, do my makeup, and let's talk about this very crazy, insane case that happened like 40 minutes from me. So this whole entire case actually takes place in Norton Shores, Michigan, in Muskegon, Michigan. And I know this case very well. I think I was like a year out of high school when all of this happened. I didn't know every single detail until I started really digging into my research. And now that I know every single detail, it is just crazy to me that all of this happened so close to home. So this all took place on April 26, 2013, when 25-year-old Jessica Heeringa was working at the Exxon gas station on Sternberg Road in Norton Shores, Michigan, while working the night shift. However, when a customer came into the gas station to make a purchase, he saw no employees there. The customer called 911 immediately and police arrived on the scene. Now, who was Jessica Heeringa? Jessica Heeringa was a 25-year-old woman born on July 16th, 1987. She was a young mother to a son. And since she was a young mother, she was obviously struggling financially. It's always a struggle to provide for you and this new life that you brought into the world. Jessica Heeringa was the kind of person where she wanted to provide for herself and for her family, so she would work constant hours at this Exxon gas station. She was constantly picking up shifts. She was constantly covering for people. She would work double shifts sometimes. And what's ironic about this whole thing is the night that Jessica Heeringa disappeared from this Exxon gas station, it was actually on a night where she wasn't even scheduled to work. Of course, she was there working, and she was also there working alone. Now, when the Norton Shores police officers arrived at the scene after the customer called 911 after discovering that there were no employees in the store, when the police officers got there to assess the crime scene, there really wasn't one. Nothing in the store was disturbed. There was no sign of a struggle. All of her belongings were still there. Her car was still there. Her purse, her coat. All the money from the cash registers was still there, so obviously this wasn't a robbery motive. Jessica was just gone. Just gone. Now, during this time, there were absolutely no security cameras in or around this Exxon gas station, which, can I just say, how stupid is that? First of all, you have a very young woman working there alone, and you have no security cameras. And that's also insane to me because gas stations, they are notorious for getting robbed. Why wouldn't you have security cameras? That just baffled me. I was like, really? No cameras at all? So unfortunately, since there were no cameras, police had to rely on eyewitness accounts on when the last time Jessica Heeringa was seen. And during this time, police started to have a little bit of a theory that this may have been an abduction, but they don't have any solid proof yet. Now, at 10:52 p.m. on April 26, a customer came in and saw Jessica Heeringa working, and this customer bought a cigarette lighter. And by 11:07 p.m. that same night, when the next customer came in, the customer that ended up calling 911, she was gone. And this was about 15 minutes before the store was supposed to close for the night. While investigators were doing their kind of search around the store, around the outside of the store, trying to find any evidence they could as trying to figure out where the heck Jessica Heeringa went, they found about a about this big of a size of blood outside the gas station in the back. By the back door outside of the gas station, they found blood on the ground. And soon after this, a different employee who also worked at that same gas station came forward to detectives and told them something very important. She said that she drove past the gas station that night and saw a silver minivan parked outside in the back of the gas station by that back door, back of the store, where the blood was also found. This employee spotted this van and thought it was kind of weird and brought it up to investigators. Now again, keep that in mind. It's very important. Now, when this happened, this turned out to be an absolute circus of people trying to find Jessica Heeringa. I mean, when I tell you this case was everywhere, it was literally everywhere. All of West Michigan got involved. The community, the media, the police officers, investigators, even the Secret Service got involved with this case. How crazy is that? That doesn't happen very often. Now, you guys remember that blood spot that was found outside in the back of the gas station? Well, it turns out that that blood was actually Jessica Heeringa's blood. They also found 2 watch batteries outside in that same location, and they also found this like black plastic cover thing that's kind of like a laser sight that belongs on a gun. They found that little plastic piece also on the ground near the watch batteries and the blood spot that was found. And that little sight gun thing, that was a Carl Walter laser sight, and the gun it belonged to, or they suspected it belonged to, was a Walter P22 semi-automatic pistol. Remember the name of that gun. Now, remember that employee that told investigators about the silver minivan? Well, she said that that night around 11 o'clock, she was driving her motorcycle, or riding her motorcycle, down the road, and she happened to pass by her workplace around 11 o'clock when she saw that silver minivan. Now, instead of pulling in and going in to check on Jessica, she thought it was suspicious, so she decided to actually pull over and kind of watch what was going on, because she honestly wasn't sure what was going on. So as she watched, she saw the van pull up, park behind the gas station, turn the headlights off. She saw the back hatch of the van go up. After a little while, it went back down and the van drove away. And as the van was driving away, the employee decided to kind of pull up and see if she could get a look at who the driver was. She said the driver was a middle-aged male, heavy set, brown hair, beard, and mustache. But she did not see Jessica Heeringa in the van. She only saw the male driver. Now, that description of that man, you know, it kind of just sounds like your everyday average Joe, right? So, I mean, while, yeah, it's great that she got a description of the driver, it's like, well, that narrows it down, right? So police investigators decided to pull surveillance footage from other surrounding businesses. And while they did catch the minivan on these cameras, the quality of them was worse than being filmed on an actual potato. So they couldn't really make much of the description of the van. They couldn't get a license plate. The only thing they were able to determine is that the minivan started to head northbound. And then that's pretty much when this whole trail of trying to find the minivan in question went cold. The only correlation they had is that Jessica Heeringa was working at the gas station, the silver minivan pulls up, Jessica Heeringa disappears, and so does the van. That is all they have to go on right now. Now, usually when someone is, ends up disappearing or abducted or murdered or anything like that, police usually have a list of suspects that they can start to question. Usually it's like, the spouse or the partner of the person, it's the family, distant family, boyfriends, friends, things like that. So they did have a few people that they did question in Jessica Heeringa's case, trying to figure out if maybe someone close to her did this, because I would say like 80% of the time when a murder happens, it's usually done by somebody close to you, okay? Keep that in mind. Sleep with one eye open, kids. They looked into Jessica Heeringa's boyfriend / the father of her child. They talked to him to see if he maybe had anything to do with it. And they also discovered that Jessica Heeringa was actually having some intimate affairs with a married man who was also a regular at the Exxon gas station. That's kind of how they met and got things going. So they did question him and his wife, but they were all eventually excluded from being suspects. And for an entire year, everything hit a dead end. The entire case went cold. That is until 1 year later, in 2014, another Muskegon woman was found. On June 29th, 2014, a woman was spotted by a couple driving by laying on the side of the road. And that young woman who was laying on the side of the road was 36-year-old Rebekah Bletsch. Rebekah Bletsch was born on November 23rd, 1977. Now, initially, the couple that spotted Rebekah laying on the side of the road, at first they thought it was probably a hit-and-run accident. Rebekah was wearing athletic clothes, kind of like running clothes, so they thought maybe she was just running on the side of the road and got hit by a car. It happens, right? Hit and runs happen all the time, unfortunately. But they initially thought that it was a hit-and-run accident. Now, one of the drivers was actually a nurse, so she started to do CPR on the victim. However, upon further inspection, it was found that Rebekah Bletsch actually had 3 bullet holes in the back of her head. And sadly, she had passed away from her injuries. Now this has turned into a suspected hit and run to a full-blown homicide. And then when police and investigators showed up at the scene, they actually found 3 .22 caliber casings that belonged to a .22 caliber pistol. You guys remember? 22 cal? You guys remember? Now, after a while of having absolutely no leads to the Rebekah Bletsch murder, except for the minor connection of the .22 caliber casings that were found at Rebekah's scene that could possibly belong to the same gun that plastic laser sight was found at Jessica Heeringa's, besides that very minor connection, they really had no leads, no eyewitnesses, and no idea who could have committed this murder until another incident takes place 2 years later. This time, an attempted kidnapping. And this kidnapping would be the thing that would really start to put this whole crazy, mysterious puzzle fully back together. On April 16th, 2016, almost 3 years after Jessica Heeringa disappears and almost 2 years after Rebekah Bletsch was murdered, a young 16-year-old girl by the name of Madison Nygard was walking home from an all-night party. She gets lost, has no idea where she is, she's scared, she's crying, she doesn't know what to do, and lo and behold, a silver minivan pulls up alongside Madison. He starts off the whole asking her if she needs a ride. She says no, but she really needs to use a phone so she can call somebody. The driver of the van tells her, well, I have a phone, just get in and I'll let you use it. Now, since Madison was so young and so scared, she gets inside the minivan to use the phone. However, there is no phone, at least one that's not working. And once Madison gets inside the van, the driver drives off with Madison inside. Now, while they're inside the car and while they're driving down these very rural roads in Muskegon, again, this was another Muskegon County incident. While they're driving, the driver of the van pulls a gun and points it at Madison while they're driving. Now, Madison, again, very scared, makes a very, very brave decision. She unlocks the doors, opens the van door, and jumps out of the moving minivan to escape her captor. A lot of people don't have the gumption to do something like that so quickly, so major props to her. That's amazing. Now, she is hurt when you're jumping out of a moving vehicle, so Madison did sustain some injuries. However, she was able to get back up and start running, and she was able to run to a neighboring house, get help, and call 911. Madison escaped and was alive. Thank God. Now, when police showed up and investigators arrived on the scene, guess what they found? They found 2 unspent shell casings that belonged to a .22 caliber pistol. Okay? .22 caliber again. It's all starting to connect now. You guys starting to see what's happening here? Yeah? Okay, well, keep listening. There's more. Now, in case you guys don't know what unspent shell casings mean, basically it means bullets that weren't fired through a gun. So sometimes this can happen if you literally just drop them on the ground, or if the gun happened to jam up and you go to rig it, I think that's the correct word, rig it, something like that, the shell casings come out and land on the ground, unspent, unfired. That's what that means. So now investigators, after they talk to Madison and they get her statement, they again hear the silver minivan. So now they were on a minivan hunt, so to speak, which good luck with that. Do you know how many people have minivans in this country, let alone in the state of Michigan? Good luck. Like, one of the most common vehicles in this country, they're on the hunt for. But thankfully, by the grace of God, that search didn't take very long at all. There was a business close by to where this attempted kidnapping happened. I believe it was like a blueberry farm or some kind of fruit farm nearby that actually had security cameras outside of their business. So when police showed up at this business and asked the owner to take a look at their security footage, they got the silver minivan on that footage. They spotted the minivan pulling into the driveway, kind of on like the south entrance, pulling into like this circular parking lot, turning around and going back out the north entrance, back where Madison escaped. So it's almost like this minivan was going back to the scene of the crime. What an idiot. Now, the security footage of the van, they were able to see the van clear as day. However, they were unable to get a license plate, unfortunately. So their next step was they needed to find out the exact make and model of this van, so they brought in a vehicle expert. And honestly, thank God for vehicle experts, because this guy was able to literally nail this van exactly. That this is a 2004 to 2007 Dodge Caravan with stow and go seating, okay? Remember the stow and go seating. Now, this particular minivan had a very specific detail that you or I probably wouldn't be able to figure out, but this car expert knew right away. This specific minivan was manufactured in Canada. And how did he figure that out? Well, on this minivan, on the top front center of the van was a little tiny black antenna. You know how other cars have like the long antennas in the back or, stuff like that? Well, this van had a very tiny black antenna on the front center of the van, the very top of the van, which meant that that van was only manufactured in Canada because those vans manufactured in Canada had those same antennas. How freaking crazy is that? I would have never made that connection. So next, with all of that information, investigators had to take that information, go through the database. They had to pull all the VIN numbers of those vans that were manufactured in Canada and try to figure out which one of those VIN numbers attached to that van made its way to Muskegon, Michigan through registration. Now, after doing this, it was discovered that 33,000 of those same exact minivans are here in Michigan. So they had to take all that information, track it down by geographical location until they came across the one that was in Norton Shores, Muskegon, Michigan. And they were able to find the driver of that van. And the driver of that van was none other than Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey Willis was born on March 6, 1970, making him 53 years old today. He had no criminal history. He worked the overnight shift at a furniture manufacturer in Spring Lake, Michigan, which, can I just say, that's crazy because that's where my boyfriend lived. Spring Lake, that is so close. What the hell? He was married and he overall seemed to be a pretty average guy. He even had a child from a previous relationship. A daughter, nonetheless. Now, work records did show that Jeffrey Willis was actually fired from a previous job. I believe he was a janitor at like an elementary school or something, and it was found that he was using a school computer to look at adult spicy websites. So he was caught and fired, but there were no charges pressed, and he was never arrested for that. Now, this is just kind of a little side fact that we'll get into more in a second, but it turns out that Jeffrey Willis was actually a regular customer at the same Exxon gas station on Sternberg Road that Jessica Heeringa worked at and that Jessica Heeringa disappeared from. How do I know that? Well, based off of eyewitness accounts and receipts found, it showed that Jeffrey Willis was a regular customer, and there was a receipt found that showed that Jeffrey Willis was at that same Exxon gas station the night Jessica Heeringa disappeared. Coincidence? I think not. So since Jeffrey Willis was tied to being the driver of the minivan that was connected to the attempted kidnapping, that was enough to bring him in for questioning, and on May 17th, 2016, Jeffrey Willis was brought in for questioning. Now, during his questioning, he spilled a little something. During his questioning, right when they get into the room, one of the first things he says is, "Yeah, I was questioned about the Jessica Heeringa girl too." Now, in fact, Jeffrey Willis was questioned by police back in 2013 looking for details in the Jessica Heeringa disappearance. He was questioned. They talked to him. That's when they found the receipts from the Exxon gas station that I told you guys about a minute ago. They even looked in his van that day they questioned him back in 2013. Now, the van did smell like cleaner, which is weird. However, they did not have enough probable cause to bring him in and hold him there. So they couldn't arrest him, basically. If you have no probable cause, you can't arrest somebody. But what they could have done, and what they should have done, and what they didn't do, is they didn't bring him in for questioning back in 2013. They questioned him at the door, they didn't arrest him, and they left it at that. They did not bring him in for further questioning like they could have and like they should have. They just didn't do it. Why didn't they do it? I have no idea, but I can guarantee you that they are kicking themselves that they didn't do it. Like, what a mistake on law enforcement's part, am I right? Now, as the questioning goes on in 2016, May 17th, 2016, when they're questioning Jeffrey Willis about the attempted kidnapping, while that questioning is going on, he starts to become very, like, as it's going and as they're asking more questions, his answers start to become shorter. He starts to become very shut down. He starts to become very, annoyed, peeved, angry almost. Not answering questions, and then at one point gets so angry he stands up and tries to walk out of the room. Now, due to 16-year-old Madison Nygard picking out Jeffrey Willis's photo out of a photo lineup, they now have probable cause to hold him and detain him in police custody. And then after they did that, they let him know that they are now searching his house and the minivan. Now, remember in the beginning when I told you guys about that stow and go seating and to remember that? Okay, well, here we go. Now, the stow and go seating is a very fun feature in those minivans. There's all kinds of different little storage compartments that are kind of hidden that you can put stuff in, for like fun family trips, going to the beach or going to a picnic or camping or, murder weapons. Well, when police looked in Jeffrey Willis's minivan in that stow and go seating, they found a padlocked toolbox. And once they got inside that toolbox, they found all sorts of fun stuff. Chains, gags, handcuffs, rope, J-hooks, syringes, insulin, and the most disturbing thing of all, a human printout taped to the top of the toolbox, a diagram showing all the different insulin injection spots on the human body. Now, for those of you who do not know, injecting insulin into a person who does not need insulin can have very catastrophic, even deadly effects. Trust me, I literally almost learned the hard way on this one and almost had to go to the hospital because there was one time I was trying to give a diabetic cat their insulin shot. Well, the cat freaked out because they saw a dog, and the cat moved and I almost stabbed myself in the hand with insulin. So I almost learned the hard way on that one, how dangerous insulin can be for people who do not need it. Now, when they were further searching the van, they found another box inside the van, and inside this box was the Walter P22 semi-automatic pistol and bullets, 22 caliber bullets, matching the same bullets that were found at the Rebekah Bletsch murder scene. Now, Jeffrey Willis had two houses. He had his house in which he shared with his wife, and he also had ownership of his deceased grandpa's house that was pretty much abandoned, but I mean, you could still access it and put shit in there. Well, when they got to the grandpa's house, they found in the basement a lot of empty bottles of bleach. Okay, now mind you, this was an abandoned house. It was like decrepit. It was like pretty much almost condemned at this point. What do you need? What are you cleaning in that house that requires that much bleach, right? Because I mean, you're not taking care of the house. You definitely ain't using that bleach to clean the house. And there was so much bleach in that house, like an abnormal amount of bleach that you would need just for an average everyday home. So, what are you cleaning? What you cleaning in there? Now, in Jeffrey Willis's house, his actual house in which he shared with his wife, up in the air vent, in the air duct, they found a portable hard drive up in the air vent stuck to the side of the air duct, okay? Now, the only reason that you would need to do that as if you were hiding something, right? I mean, I put my hard drives in a drawer, right? I don't know why you would ever need to put something in an air vent unless you were trying to hide something. When investigators plugged in that hard drive into a computer, they saw a file folder that was titled VIX. And inside that VIX folder, they found 2 more folders. One of those folders was titled JLH, and the other one was titled RSB, which, let me just tell you, those are the initials of Jessica Heeringa and Rebekah Bletsch. JLH, RSB. JLH, Jessica Heeringa. RSB, Rebekah Bletsch. And they also believed that VIX, that first folder, the main folder that was titled VIX, they believed that that actually stood for victims. Now, when they opened up these folders, they started with the JLH folder, which stood for, they believe, Jessica Lynn Heeringa. And inside her folder was her missing persons flyer and a bunch of other photos of her that were found from the internet. He basically just pulled them off the internet and put them in that folder. And it was the exact same thing when they opened up the RSB folder, which was believed to be Rebekah Bletsch's folder. It was the same thing. It was photos of her and articles about her that were pulled from the internet. So after all of these things were found out, Jeffrey Willis was sitting in jail and was awaiting trial for the murder of Rebekah Bletsch and possible murder of Jessica Heeringa. Now, this next part is kind of like a little bit of a side story that really isn't super relevant, but I thought I would just mention it. Now, Jeffrey Willis had a cousin. This cousin was named Kevin Bloom. Now, during this whole investigative process and after Jeffrey Willis was arrested, Kevin Bloom, Jeffrey's cousin, came forward to investigators and told police that he was actually involved in disposing of Jessica Heeringa's body, and he knew information about the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa and that he was involved in it. He even told them that he helped bury her body. However, for whatever reason, soon after Kevin told police and investigators about this, he quickly turned around and said, actually, I lied and I made that all up. Like, what the fuck? Police wasted so many resources using Kevin's information, going out to the property in which Jessica Heeringa was buried, and they had cadaver dogs, they were digging, trying to find the body where Kevin Bloom said it was buried, but there was nothing there. And then they come back, and he just says, oh yeah, I lied, I made the whole thing up. What the hell did you lie for? Why would you even want to lie about something like that? Like, for attention? Is this like a weird family thing where you wanted to help your cousin? Like, I don't know what the heck that's all about. I just thought that was very, very strange and very kind of out of left field and very weird and very like, what? So Kevin, since he did lie to police, Kevin was charged with lying to police, and he was also charged with accessory after the fact, which are both felonies, and he was arrested. Now, back to Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey Willis pleaded not guilty to the murder of Rebekah Bletsch, so by pleading not guilty, this automatically was going to trial. And since there was so much evidence that tied him to the Rebekah Bletsch murder, her case was set to go first, and then the second trial would be for Jessica Heeringa. Now, at the trial for Rebekah Bletsch, at the murder trial for Rebekah Bletsch, Jeffrey Willis took the stand to testify. Usually they don't recommend anyone do that. You do have that right, you can do that, but it is highly not recommended. But Jeffrey Willis was so narcissistic and he thought he was so, smooth and charming that he thought he could get up on the stand and testify in his defense. Honestly, it's almost as dumb to me as when Ted Bundy acted as his own attorney in his trial back in the 1970s. Like, how dumb is that? Now, when Jeffrey Willis testified on the stand, he looked like a totally different person because he was always very heavy set. He was very kind of just dirty looking. But when he came to court and was testifying, he looked like a totally different person. He had lost weight. He was clean cut. He tried to come off very charming. However, that didn't work out well for him. He had some of the dumbest answers to these questions. He was laughing, chuckling, trying to make jokes, and he even blamed the contents of that padlock toolbox, remember that? He tried to blame the contents of that on his own grandson. Like, what? After the prosecutors and the defense rested their case in chief, the case was then handed over to the jury, and the jury only deliberated for 90 minutes before coming back with a verdict. And that verdict was Jeffrey Willis was found guilty of first-degree murder for Rebekah Bletsch. And then in 2018, the Jeffrey Willis trial for the Jessica Heeringa case starts. Now, in this case, the evidence was very similar. However, Jessica Heeringa's body still to this day has never been found. Therefore, if you don't have a body, you can't really say it's a murder. But what helped in this case is that black plastic laser sight cover thing that belonged to the gun. Remember that from the very beginning when they found that outside the gas station? Well, that plastic piece was supposed to belong to that Walter P22 semi-automatic pistol, and when investigators searched the van and they found that gun, they found that that plastic piece that was supposed to be on it was missing. So they had that connecting them, and they also had Madison Nygard, the young girl who was kidnapped or almost kidnapped by Jeffrey Willis. She was able to come on the stand and testify and tie Jeffrey Willis to that silver minivan that was also seen at the Exxon gas station the night Jessica Heeringa disappeared. After that case was done and both sides rested their case in chief, Jeffrey Willis was found guilty of first-degree open murder for Jessica Heeringa. So Jeffrey Willis would be spending the rest of his life in prison with absolutely no possibility of parole. He has now 2 first-degree murder sentences. He ain't going nowhere except prison. Now, when it comes to the Madison Nygard kidnapping case, prosecutors did not pursue any sort of charges or trial for that case. They figured since Jeffrey Willis already received 2 first-degree murder charges, that he would be spending the rest of his life in prison anyway, and there's no point in wasting, time, money, and resources pursuing another trial when he's already gonna rot anyway. Which, while I do understand why they did that, I feel like it should have been up to Madison to decide whether or not she wanted a trial, because sometimes, victims, when they have a trial, sometimes that is a closure for them, and the fact that she didn't really get that choice kind of sucked, but they didn't end up, charging him with attempted kidnapping. 6 weeks later, at the sentencing for the Rebekah Bletsch murder, Jeffrey Willis was obviously charged with life in prison with no possibility of parole. And once that was done, usually the families or the victims can give what is called victim impact statements, where they can get up in front of the court and in front of the guilty, the defendant, they can get up in front of them and they can make a statement about how they feel about what's been done to them, to their family, to the community, etc. Stuff like that. Well, Jeffrey Willis decided that he did not want to be present for these victim impact statements. I did not know that was allowed, but apparently he did not have to be there when the victim impact statements were read. He decides that he's gonna leave. He doesn't want to stay to listen to the victim impact statements. However, on his way out of the courtroom, he does something that is so incredibly sickening, it made my stomach turn. As Jeffrey Willis goes to walk out of the courtroom, he turns and looks at Rebekah Bletsch's family and he blows them a kiss. Blows them a kiss, something like that, to the family of Rebekah Bletsch, whom he shot in the head 3 times with a .22 caliber pistol. Like, what a despicable and evil man. Like, what the fuck? But Jeffrey Willis did not get out of hearing those impact statements, because what they decided to do is they had Rebekah Bletsch's family record their victim impact statements. And as Jeffrey Willis was being transferred to prison in the police car, the 2 police officers in front played those recordings of the victim impact statements over and over and over and over again. So Jeffrey Willis had no choice but to sit there and listen to the victim impact statements. That is like the best shit ever. Like, oh my God, whoever's idea it was, I think it was either the prosecutor or one of the police officers, I'm not sure. But whoever came up with that idea, round of applause. Round of applause. That is iconic. Now, since this whole case has happened, there is now what is known as the Rebekah Bletsch law, which means the convicted can no longer leave the courtroom when victim impact statements are being read. They have to be present now in the state of Michigan, which I think is absolutely amazing. So there we have it, guys. We have a case of a disappearance, a murder, and an attempted kidnapping. All in one. All done by the same man, who, if he was never caught, he would have probably become one of Michigan's most notorious serial killers. How crazy is that? He would have taken so many more lives of so many innocent women. Just like going over all of this and researching it and talking about it, my heart just absolutely breaks for the families and the victims that were involved with this, and they had the unfortunate crossing of Jeffrey Willis's path. It just breaks my heart, and I pray and hope that everyone, the families and just everyone involved is doing okay, and that they're able to move on and find peace and closure with all of this. But that is the story, the true story of what happened here in Michigan, in Muskegon, Michigan, of Jeffrey Willis, Michigan's worst nightmare. And as for Jeffrey Willis, I just hope he rots in hell, because let's face it, he's just the scum on Satan's feet, honestly. Like, he is a despicable human, and he's disgusting. So he can rot in hell. So there we have it, guys. What did you think of this story? This is just absolutely insane to me, how this one man could do these three things all in one area and get away with it for several years. Like, it's crazy that even though he left evidence at the scene, like, it wasn't enough to, like, really track him down. So it's like, while he was an actual idiot, I'm surprised he got away with it for so long. So let me know all of your thoughts, comments, opinions down below in the comments. Please remember to keep it respectful. Do not show hate to the families, the victims, anyone I mentioned in this video. I mean, except Jeffrey Willis. Go ahead, go off on him. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more true crime here on my channel from me, please go down and give this video a huge thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on all notifications, all of that fun, cool, awesome stuff. But I'm gonna head out of here and start editing this, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video. I love you guys. Be safe and stay healthy. I love you guys. Bye. Mwah.